My wife took our savings and ran off with her boss, so I emptied the accounts, sued them both, and bought a car with her credit score. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I thought I had the perfect marriage. We'd been together for nearly a decade, and to everyone else, we looked like the couple who had it all figured out: steady jobs, a cozy little home, a future that felt secure. I used to catch myself feeling grateful that I'd won in life so early. But sometimes, the things you're most sure about are the ones that crumble the fastest. It started small: her late nights at the office, the way she'd guard her phone like it held state secrets. Big project deadline, she'd say with a tired smile, kissing me on the cheek before slipping into the shower. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So I brushed it off. Everyone gets busy with work, right? Still, the constant buzzing of her phone at midnight. The texts she'd tilt her screen away from. They left a knot in my chest I couldn't quite untangle. One evening, I joked, "What? Are you running a secret second family with how often you're glued to that phone?" She laughed too quickly. The kind of laugh that doesn't reach the eyes, and said, "Don't be ridiculous." But then she slipped the phone into her pocket instead of leaving it on the counter like she used to. That moment sat heavy with me. I noticed other things too: money disappearing faster than usual, receipts for takeout I never saw, gas bills higher even though she claimed she was driving less. My gut whispered that something wasn't right, but my heart shut it down every time. I told myself stress explained everything, that she just needed space and support. I convinced myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, something ugly was stirring. A voice I didn't want to hear kept asking, "What if this isn't stress? What if it's something else entirely?" And that voice wouldn't stop. I remember the exact morning I decided to check our joint account. It was a random Tuesday, and I just wanted to make sure the mortgage payment cleared. But when I logged in, my stomach dropped. Over $6,000 was gone. Not just spent, but gone. No clear trail, no explanation that made sense. For a moment, I froze in front of the screen, staring like the numbers would magically rearrange themselves if I blinked hard enough. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd paid off a family debt she hadn't mentioned. Maybe it was some big bill I'd forgotten about. I even thought, maybe she's planning a surprise something for us. But when I dug deeper, the illusion shattered. The credit card statements were worse than I could have imagined. Hotel charges I'd never seen. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. Boutique shopping sprees in her name. I felt the back of my neck heat up, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. My first instinct was denial. There has to be a mistake. Maybe stolen card numbers, maybe fraud. But the names on the receipts matched hers. Her card, her signature. No one else. That night, while she showered, I sat in the living room with the laptop glowing in the dark. Every charge felt like a knife, each one cutting deeper. I began tracking everything, cross-referencing dates, receipts, even gas station stops. A pattern started to emerge, one too deliberate to ignore. She wasn't just spending recklessly. She was funneling money out of our lives for something or someone else. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't carelessness. It was intentional, and that realization hit me harder than anything else ever had. Because once you know, you can't unknow. I waited 2 days before I finally confronted her. I wanted to give myself time to calm down, to make sure I wasn't jumping to conclusions. So, one night after dinner, I sat across from her at the kitchen table and said as evenly as I could, "Hey, I noticed some money missing from our account. Do you know what that's about?" Her reaction was instant, explosive. She slammed her fork down and glared at me like I'd just accused her of murder. "Seriously? You're checking up on me now? What are you keeping tabs on every dollar I spend?" Her voice rose, sharp and cutting. "God, you sound just like my father, controlling, paranoid, never trusting me. The words hit harder than I expected. I hadn't accused her of anything. I'd just asked a question. But she kept going, twisting the knife. Do you have any idea how insulting this is? I work my ass off every day, and instead of appreciating me, you treat me like some kind of thief. I tried to explain. I just noticed unusual charges. Hotels, restaurants, things we didn't do together. But she rolled her eyes and scoffed. You're imagining things? Do you realize how crazy you sound right now? Maybe you should get help. Gaslighting. That's what it was, though at the time I didn't want to admit it. She made me feel like I was the problem. Like I'd crossed some invisible line by even noticing the missing money. After that night, something shifted. She started coming home even later, claiming she was buried in projects. Her phone, once left on the counter, was now always glued to her hand or face down on silent. And though she denied everything, her behavior screamed louder than her words ever could. One night, after she slipped off to work late again, I sat alone on the couch, scrolling through her public social media. I wasn't expecting much. She'd grown cautious lately, but something caught my eye. A location check-in at a downtown hotel, posted weeks ago. Nothing too obvious. Just a quick story tagged with a cocktail glass emoji. But when I pulled up the receipt records I'd saved, the initials on the transaction matched her boss's corporate card. My chest tightened. Her boss, of all people. A man who shook my hand at company events, who'd looked me in the eye and called me lucky to have her. He wasn't just her employer, he was married, with 2 kids in middle school, known in town as a pillar of respectability. The kind of guy people trusted to sit on school boards and charity committees. The idea that he was the one she was sneaking off with made my stomach twist into knots. I clicked back through her feed, looking with new eyes. Subtle things I hadn't noticed before became glaring. The way she tagged generic locations near his office. The unexplained business dinners. The vague captions about late nights with the best team. They weren't proof on their own. But paired with the receipts in my drawer, they screamed betrayal. I felt my whole body buzzing. Like my skin couldn't contain the rage building inside. This wasn't just a random fling, yet was with someone she saw every single day. Someone who signed her paychecks. Someone who played the role of family man while stealing mine. I couldn't stop picturing them together. In the hotels. In the restaurants. Laughing at the lies she fed me. The disbelief weighed heavier than the anger, crushing me from the inside. And yet, it's a small, terrifying thought gnawed at me. If she was bold enough to involve him, what else was she willing to risk? I'll never forget the day it all collapsed. I came home from work, tired and hungry, only to notice how unnervingly quiet the house felt. No shoes by the door. No jacket on the hook. When I walked into the bedroom, my heart stopped. Her side of the closet was empty. The hangers dangled like skeletons, a few stray tags and receipts littering the floor. It was like she'd been erased overnight. On the kitchen counter sat a folded note. My hands shook as I opened it. The words burned themselves into me. I can't keep living like this. I deserve happiness, and you've been holding me back. Don't try to find me. I'm done. There wasn't an ounce of remorse. No hint of the woman I thought I married. Just cold detachment. As if I were a burden she'd finally shrugged off. But the real gut punch came when I checked our accounts. Every last cent gone. She had cleaned us out, drained the joint savings until the balance glared back at me with a cruel $0. My knees nearly buckled. In one calculated move, she had left me broke, abandoned, and humiliated. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, the silence pressing down like a weight I couldn't lift. My mind kept replaying everything: her late nights, the guarded phone, the missing money. All the pieces fit now, and the picture they made was unbearable. She wasn't stressed from work. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was planning her escape with him. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept seeing the empty closet, hearing the scrape of hangers against each other, like ghosts mocking me. My life had been gutted, and I was left with nothing but her lies and an aching emptiness. And yet, as broken as I felt, I had no idea this was only the beginning. The days after she left were a blur of shock and humiliation. I couldn't hide its hour. Accounts were empty, my wife had vanished, and the whispers started almost immediately. Some friends reached out with pity, their voices soft, eyes full of sympathy. But others weren't so kind. I heard the murmurs, "He must have done something. No woman just leaves like that." The judgment stung worse than the silence. People were dissecting my pain like it was gossip. I started questioning everything. Was I too controlling? Too distant? Did I miss something so obvious that this was somehow my fault? Night after night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with panic. Some mornings I woke up gasping, heart racing like I was drowning in air. Food lost its taste. Sleep became a stranger. Every thought spiraled back to the same knife's edge. Why wasn't I enough? And then came the rumors. Mutual acquaintances mentioned seeing her at expensive restaurants, draped on his arm. A coworker whispered that they'd spotted her at a luxury hotel, laughing loudly in the lobby while he signed for their suite. Every story was another wound, each one confirming what I already knew. She wasn't just gone, she was flaunting it. She wanted people to see she'd traded up, that she'd chosen someone richer, more powerful, more exciting. The humiliation burned hot in my gut, mixing with something darker. Anger. For the first time since she left, that anger gave me energy. The image of her sipping champagne with him while I sat in my gutted home made my hands clench into fists. If she thought she could rob me blind, humiliate me, and walk away unscathed, she was wrong. Very wrong. I hit a breaking point one morning when I found myself staring at the empty closet again, rage boiling hotter than the grief. Sitting there, I realized I had two choices: let her and her boss destroy me, or fight back. For once, I chose the second, quietly, without telling a soul. I booked a consultation with a lawyer. I half expected the attorney to laugh me out of the office, but instead, he leaned back, listened carefully, and nodded. "You've got options," he said, sliding a legal pad toward me. Options? That word alone felt like oxygen after weeks of drowning. He explained that we could freeze remaining assets, subpoena her financial records, even sue for damages related to her draining the accounts. And if her boss had helped facilitate it, he could be pulled into the mess too. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, receipts, and glowing laptop screens. Bank statements, hotel charges, screenshots of her check-ins. Every ugly piece of evidence I'd ignored now became a weapon. I started organizing it all, labeling files, highlighting dates that matched suspicious transactions. Every line of proof built a case not just against her, but against the life she thought she could build on my back. For the first time since she left, I felt a flicker of control. The panic in my chest eased just slightly, replaced with something sharper focus. She thought she'd broken me beyond repair. But she had no idea what I was capable of when cornered, and as I stacked the evidence neatly in a folder, one thought pulsed louder than my heartbeat. This isn't over. Not even close. One night, while combing through another pile of financial records, I stumbled across something that didn't make sense. A credit card statement with a bank logo I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was spam. Some junk mail slipped in with the rest. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was her account puppened in her name, but tied to our joint credit score. Tens of thousands of dollars in charges, none of which I'd ever seen before. Designer clothes, flights, luxury items, all hidden beneath the surface while I was busy believing we were stable. I tore through the files, checking for more. And sure enough, there were 3 other accounts, all secret, all maxed out. My hands trembled as I added up the numbers. The total made me dizzy. She'd racked up more debt than we even had in savings before she drained it at first. Panic hit me like a hammer. I thought I was on the hook, that she'd not only destroyed our marriage, but shackled me to her recklessness for years. But when I showed the files to my lawyer, his lips curved into a small smile. "This," he said, "tapping the paperwork might be the best thing she ever did for you. These are her accounts, her signatures, her liability. Legally, you can sever yourself from this. She'll be left with the debt." It was like a switch flipped in my brain. All the despair, all the helplessness shifted into something colder, sharper. For the first time, I realized my revenge wouldn't just be emotional. It could be financial destruction. She thought she'd buried me in shame, but she'd actually built her own coffin out of debt and lies. I sat there, staring at the stack of statements, imagining her face when she realized every payment. Every crushing bill was hers alone to carry. And that image gave me strength because finally, I wasn't the one drowning anymore. The day we filed the lawsuits, it felt like I was finally breathing after months underwater. My lawyer moved fast: embezzlement for draining the joint accounts, fraud for the hidden credit cards, and even alienation of affection aimed at her boss. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about exposing them, dragging the truth into the light where they couldn't spin it into lies. The first ripple hit harder than I expected. The boss's wife, who I barely knew beyond polite hellos at company events, found out through the court papers. The moment she saw the filings, her entire world must have cracked open. Within days, I heard she'd packed up the kids and left their house. The man my wife had run off with was suddenly battling a war on two fronts. My lawsuit and his collapsing family news travels fast in small towns. Whispers spread in offices, neighborhoods, church pews. People who once smiled politely at them began lowering their voices, shaking their heads. "Did you hear about?" became the opening line in every conversation. My humiliation, once private, was now shared. But for the first time, it wasn't me under the spotlight. It was them. I'll never forget the look on my wife's face during the preliminary hearing. Gone was the smugness, the dismissive tilt of her chin. She looked rattled, clutching her lawyer's arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And the boss? His face burned crimson, the kind of shame you can't mask no matter how much money or power you have. They thought they could quietly rewrite their lives, leaving wreckage behind. But instead, their betrayal spun into a public scandal neither of them could contain. And the best part? This was only the beginning of their unraveling. My lawyer leaned across the desk one afternoon, a sly grin tugging at his lips. "You know," he said, "before we sever the accounts completely, there's one last thing you can do. Something." Poetic, he slid a folder toward me. Inside were the details of her still active credit line, high limit, good standing, all tied to her name. "If you wanted," he continued, "you could make a purchase. A big one. Legally, it'll stick to her." At first, I hesitated. It felt petty, almost beneath me. But then I remembered the empty closet, the drained savings, the smirk on her face the last time she called me paranoid. The thought of her opening a statement and realizing she'd be paying for my victory was too satisfying to pass up. A week later, I walked into a dealership. The smell of leather and polish hung in the air as I trailed my hand along the glossy hoods. For once, I wasn't just some broken man counting pennies. I was in control. I signed the papers with steady hands, the salesman congratulating me as though I'd won a prize. And, in a way, I had. When I slid into the driver's seat of that brand new car, the engine purring beneath me, I felt something I hadn't in months: power, freedom. As I pulled out of the lot, I couldn't help but grin. Every mile I drove was another reminder that she'd pay for this car, not me. Her choices, her betrayal, her debt. My sweet revenge. But as the tires hit the pavement, I knew this was just the appetizer. The real reckoning wasn't going to happen on the road. It was going to happen in the courtroom, and that storm was closer than either of them realized. The morning of the trial, I walked into the courthouse with my head held higher than it had been in months. Across the aisle, my wife sat with her boss, both of them dressed to the nines, whispering like they still had control. For a moment, they looked united, two people smugly convinced they could spin their way out of this. But I knew better. And as soon as testimony began, the cracks started to show. The boss's wife was called to the stand. She didn't hesitate. With her voice steady but eyes burning, she laid out everything: how she found hotel receipts, the lies he'd told about business trips, the nights he never came home. She held up screenshots, receipts, and bank transfers that lined up perfectly with the evidence I'd already provided. Each word was another blow, stripping away the facade they'd built. My wife tried to interject, shaking her head, whispering furiously to her lawyer. But the damage was done. The judge's expression hardened as the lies unraveled in real time. By the time my lawyer laid out the embezzlement and hidden credit card debts, the courtroom air felt thick with disbelief and disgust. When the ruling came, it was like the final nail in their coffin. The judge ordered her to repay the stolen funds, cover my legal fees, and the credit lines tied to her name were destroyed. Her financial world collapsed in an instant. As for her boss, the fallout spread fast. Word leaked to his company's board. His marriage was over, and his once polished reputation was left in tatters. He didn't just lose a case. He lost almost everything. I walked out of that courtroom, not just with a legal victory, but with the satisfaction of watching them crumble under the weight of their own lies. And yet, even as justice was served, I knew my story wasn't finished. Not until I found my own peace. I didn't just win money back, I got my life back. That's the truth I carry with me every day now. For months, I thought her betrayal defined me, that I'd forever be the man left with nothing while she lived it up with him. But the reality is different. When I slide into the driver's seat of that car she unknowingly pays for, I can't help but smile. Every mile I drive is proof that I'm no longer chained to her choices. She's the one buried under debt and disgrace, while I'm free. Freedom didn't come overnight, though. Therapy became my anchor sessions, where I finally unpacked years of self-doubt and shame. My therapist reminded me that I wasn't crazy, that the red flags I'd seen were real, that gaslighting had twisted me into silence. Rebuilding friendships helped too. I reached out to the people I'd pushed away during the worst of it, and slowly, I remembered what it felt like to laugh without bitterness. Trust is harder. I won't lie, it still feels fragile. But for the first time in years, I know it's possible. Because I trust myself now. I trust my instincts, my worth, my resilience. She tried to bury me under betrayal, lies, and financial ruin. But instead, she ended up teaching me the most important lesson of my life: how to dig myself out. And not just to climb back where I was, but to build higher than I ever imagined. I'm not the man who begged for scraps of honesty anymore. I'm the man who walked through fire and came out stronger, steadier, and unshakable. And that, to me, is the greatest revenge of all.